name is Alfred Hitchcock, and I would like to tell you about my forthcoming lecture. It is about the birds and their age-long relationship with man. Surely the birds appreciate all we've done for them. Don't you? Beautiful cage, fresh water, no other birds to bother you, none of that blinding sunlight. Oh! Now, why would he do that? Most peculiar. What on earth?
They're coming! They're coming!
Hello and welcome to episode 1 of my series of videos on Hitchcock movies, and today we're talking about The Birds. Possibly Hitchcock's most well-known film, which is part of the reason why I chose it to start off things. And there was another reason, but we'll get to that. But first, a fun fact. This movie is actually based on a short story, which I read back in high school. And this one part of the short story has always stuck with me, where a character looks out at the ocean and sees that the water is all white. And upon a closer inspection, the water is white because it's completely covered in seagulls just sitting, waiting to attack. So the short story is pretty great, and I think that little seagull thing may have inspired the end of the movie where the characters are driving off and birds are just everywhere. And the trailer for this movie was actually kind of special itself. It's more or less just Hitchcock talking to a camera about birds and being a big goofball as he does it.
In my lecture, I hope to make you all aware of our good friends, the birds. Theirs is a noble history, and through it all, man has played a conspicuous part. This cave drawing is one of man's earliest sketches of his feathered friend.
But it might actually be one of my favorite trailers of all time. You see, like I said, in the trailer, Hitchcock is just being a goofball. The things he's saying, there's a slight comedic air to them, but compared to what he's doing, what he's walking around and interacting with.
The story of man and his friends, the birds, is filled with many fine examples of ways in which these noble creatures have added to the beauty of the world. Take this plumed hat from the period of Charles I. How proud the birds must have been to have their feathers plucked out to brighten man's drab life.
It casts a really dark, disturbing shadow on the things that he's saying and kind of changes their meaning. So this trailer kind of leaves a weird taste in your mouth, kind of an uncomfortable feeling, and in a clever way allows Hitchcock to just simply say what the movie is about. Nature taking revenge on mankind, which may in fact mean that The Birds is proto The Happening. And the overall plot of the movie does support this little theory of mine. The movie opens with a guy deciding one day to buy his little sister lovebirds, and while he's doing that, he just happens to bump into a woman that he saw in court once and thought was hot. And after an hour of screwball-like comedy between these two characters, with enough mentionings of the phrase lovebirds, that I dare any heavy drinkers out there to take a shot every time this movie says the phrase lovebirds. And then in the second half of the movie, of course, the birds start attacking and killing everyone because we're horrible people that live ridiculous lives. So basically, The Birds is Hitchcock's environmental film, which is totally fine because outside of some silly sound effects, this movie is a goddamn masterpiece of terror and suspense. And actually, those sound effects that I mentioned a second ago, those are the real reason that I wanted to start off this series with The Birds, because, well, let's start light and fun. What even was that? What was that sound? But again, The Birds is a masterpiece of filmmaking. Mostly. The slow build, the foreshadowing, the reveals, and its ability to basically weaponize silence. It's all perfect. In particular, I really like the decision that was made to not really have music per se, but instead put a lot of emphasis on the flapping of wings and bird calls. I mean, yeah, it's a bit unfortunate the birds sound like... I mean, I could make sounds like the birds in this movie, and I am no voice actor. And hell, I might even be able to do the wings too. But again, everything else is awesome, so I'll take the amusingly unscary sounds and the handful of clever ideas that didn't quite work, especially because I honestly think that the birds in this movie, the birds from 1963, look better than the birds from Birdemic from 2010. And something I actually just noticed watching this movie again for this episode, I think the birds might be the genesis of kids singing for creepy effect in horror movies. I could be wrong, but Hitchcock is frequently called an inspiration by modern filmmakers, so... Now, if I were to lob any legitimate criticism at this movie and not just fits at laughter at things that didn't age too well, it would be about pacing. Now, I know that that's a common complaint for older movies, but I do think the argument does hold water in this case. It's true, the early scenes do thematically set up the birds attacking later, you know, portraying our hollow, selfish lives and such. But that doesn't mean that the first hour of this movie flows well, or isn't boring. Neither of which are true statements, for the record. It gets a bit boring. It's never bad, but just a bit boring. All it means is that there's more going on than a casual glance would suggest, which is normal for a film with a slow pace. So I would definitely suggest anyone that hasn't seen The Birds to check it out. Just keep in mind that a couple of things haven't aged as well as they could have. But, technically speaking, we could lodge that same criticism at things like Star Wars, and even more recently, The Matrix. It happens. But what about all of you? Am I wrong? Is The Birds as amazing as the day it was released? Or are there parts of this movie that make you smile unintentionally? Or am I completely off basis and the goofy sound effects of this movie are actually a clever reflection of the tone from the trailer? Whatever you got, let me know down below. And stay tuned because I've got more Hitchcock videos on the way. But for now, goodbye.